Hello there, welcome back to The Hollow Voice. I hated her, more than I hated Pierre. Pierre, now he was clear, easy to see. His beauty was his simplicity, his purity of thought and purpose. Sure, you hated the bastard, but you had to admire him too, scrambling across the rugged, uneven hills of what the poor, deluded asshole thought was his own country, using 20-year-old weapons against our Steyr self-targeting assault rifles, wearing those ridiculous nationalist uniforms, as if they were a shield that would protect him against anything, though they were no hell on stopping our flechettes. Yeah, he was stupid, all right, but straight as you can get. You and he knew each other, better than you've ever known anybody else, because that's the test. That's the only real test, putting yourself there, with the few other assholes who dare, believing in something stupid like your own country, in a world that doesn't believe in anything anymore. That's the kind of stupidity that's worth admiring, that's worth having. Daring those crosshairs to shake your belief, challenging that trigger finger to squeeze you out of your resolve, welcoming that round as if it was a special lover, not just a dumb lay like Shika. Now don't get me wrong, Shika's out there all alone on point, and she's lasted for over 3 months. Not an easy thing to do. She's as mean as they come, her pinched up little face wagging back and forth as she hunts, her body small and low to the ground, swaying from side to side as she shuffles from cover to cover. I've seen her grease more than her share of Pierre's, and it's weird, because she really hates them. Not with my distant, admiring kind of hate, but personal. Like they all did something awful to her last night in the woodshed, and now she's going to make the bastards pay and pay and pay. You gotta appreciate all that slow, seething hate walking up front for you, a giant scythe sweeping your path clear. She was that way when I met her back in Basic, 18 months ago. A nasty piece of business, breathing dark anger, ready to explode. I was glad when our orders came and I thought I'd seen the last of her. She going off up north to Chibugamau, where there was lots of heavy shit happening, while I pulled soft duty down south in the valley. I never expected to see her again, but I did. I remember when she transferred in, sitting across from me in the barracks, studying me when she thought I wasn't watching her, sharpening that long knife she always carried in her boot, running it up and down that whetstone, looking as if she was wondering how much of an edge she'd have to put on it to slice right through my neck with one stroke. Seeing her again that day, I felt something inside me tighten up, and I knew I hated her still, even though she has saved my life every day since just by being there, walking the point, rolling her hatred in front of her like a boulder. We'd drawn recon patrol again, another hot spot in the foothills of the Laurentians. Why us? Why always send us into the worst possible shit? We drew this kind of stuff twice as much as any other squad. It was like somebody back at HQ had it in for us. But if it troubled anyone else in our squad, they didn't complain. Instead, they seemed to like it, to savor the opportunity to raise our kill ratio. We were strung out in a ragged line. I caught sight of Shika about 10 meters ahead and a little too far to my left, so I picked up the pace, edging back in her direction. Occasionally, I could see Angela between us, flitting in and out of cover, pale and wraith-like, difficult to spot, bending tree and shrub to her will, folding them around her like a cloak. Behind me there was Cash, then, in the middle of the pack, Sarge with his little dog. Tremblay. I could never quite figure out what Tremblay's story was. A clean-shaven, regular army guy, betraying nothing, not really part of the unit. An observer, as Sarge called him, always scribbling in those little blue notebooks he carried around, attached to us in some way that was never made quite clear, observing God knows what as he hunted his own people. It gave me the creeps whenever he was behind me, like he was observing me personally, even though there wasn't a goddamn thing I could think of that was worth observing. We moved downhill, and the tree cover thinned a bit, then turned into a stand of birches, branches arching overhead to form a canopy. We broke into a copse. It was quiet and beautiful, flanked with thick undergrowth that looked like it had been cultivated. The duff soft and yielding under out boots, a shaft of sunlight slanting through the gap in the tree cover and into our eyes. Nice spot, I thought, for an ambush. Then Pierre hit us. I was knocked off my feet the instant they opened up, half a dozen slugs hammering into my flak jacket, their AK-47s making an awful racket. I rolled on the ground, wheezing and gasping, trying to catch the breath that had been hammered from my lungs, fighting off the sharp pain of what I figured was a broken rib or two. Beside me, Cash lay on the ground, blood oozing from a hole in his throat, eyes open, dead as dead can get. I heard shouts over the gunfire. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Heavy boots stamped on the ground, crashing through the underbrush, then the muffled thump of low-yield ordnance, mostly smoke it seemed, to confuse and hide. But I wasn't scared. I didn't even care if I'd been hit. The only thing I felt was anger. Anger at being on the ground, at the incompetence of Pierre not killing me when he had the chance. I wanted to make the bastard pay for his mistake. Gritting my teeth, I pushed myself to my feet, my steyr cradled in my fists, and gasped as pain spiked my ribs again. My eyes teared up. I blinked until my vision cleared. Gunfire had become sporadic, the confusion and smoke still making it difficult to know who to kill now. An occasional burst, sounds moving off in the left. Though I couldn't be sure, I guessed that Pierre had more or less hightailed it, Sarge and the rest of the squad chasing after him. I was alone. Or thought I was. Danby had been standing so still I hadn't noticed him. But there he was, off to my right, his piece gone, his eyes glassy, unfocused, seeing something I couldn't, seeing somewhere else, staring, maybe, at the place he'd rather be. About to walk. I'd seen it before, seen maybe a dozen or more in my last 2 squads. It was always the same. They'd pull their leads, drop their weapons, and disappear quietly into the bush, following Pierre mostly. Sometimes just wandering off, going God knows where, thinking God knows what. Even the ones brought back were blanks, shells, their brains wiped clean of anything but this need to walk. As if they didn't know anything anymore except how to put one foot in front of the other, step after goddamn step. Sometimes we'd find them walkers, who'd walked until they couldn't walk any farther because they fell into a ravine and broke a leg or turned an ankle on a root or something, lying there in the dirt covered with scratches and cuts where branches and twigs had whipped their faces. Usually dead, but not always. Sometimes legs still pushing against the ground, digging little channels in the earth, moving them forward, inch by terrible inch. The army says walkers are Pierre's doing, some kind of bioengineered stuff. A virus maybe, though they haven't isolated it yet, even though they've had 2 years and hundreds of walkers to experiment on. The masks and suits they used to give us didn't seem to be any damn good, and after a few weeks we gave up on them. All they know is that once you've got it, you're gone. There's no return. Irreversible cortical damage, meaning it eats away at your brain until you're nothing but a vegetable, an empty husk where someone used to live. And there was Danby, his peace gone, his eyes glassy with that look walkers get, me watching him, not offing him right then and there like I was supposed to, the way it said in our orders, because there was something wrong. A weird, nagging feeling that told me this wasn't right. He wasn't going anywhere fast, so I just moved my rifle along, keeping it trained on him, thinking it odd, not Danby at all, that there was something really out of whack because he was nothing like those other poor, dreamy bastards I'd seen walk. Nothing like them at all. Sure, he was crazy as a loon, but he just wasn't the type. You know, he just didn't have the smell. None of us did in this squad. And I realized maybe that was it. He was the first walker since they'd cobbled together our squad 6 months ago. In that time, I'd almost forgotten about walking. I tightened my finger on the trigger, about to waste him, thinking, oh well, there goes our perfect record, and I was on the ground. The trees above me spinning out of control, my head pounding and my ears ringing so loud I couldn't hear a thing. I squeezed my eyes shut, but that only made it worse, so I opened them. Shika was standing over me, rifle balanced in one hand, its muzzle almost touching my nose, her finger still inside the trigger guard. She wasn't looking at me. She was watching something else that I couldn't see. I wondered what she could be watching, in a sort of detached, dreamy way, as if it really wasn't me there, getting this weird feeling that it was important that I know what she was so intent on. So I thought hard, even though my head still pounded. Then I remembered Danby. She must have been watching him, I realized, the crazy little bitch, staring at him with this puzzled expression on her screwed-up face, an expression I'd never seen her wear before. And that's all she did. Even though she knew letting walkers go meant court-martial, still doing nothing, just watching, while I concentrated on a tendon in her forearm moving in and out, as she ran her finger up and down that hair trigger. But she didn't squeeze it, only stood there, as Danby wandered off into the bush. She looked after him for a moment, long after he must have been gone, then turned suddenly to stare at me, her eyes burning with something I couldn't understand, something I couldn't quite place, staring along the barrel of her weapon right into my face. A long, dark stare that nailed me where I was, like she wanted something, not begging or pleading, but insisting on an answer from me. Then she was gone, faster than you could imagine anyone moving, without sound or motion, just gone, leaving me there on the ground, head pounding, pain searing my side, scared that maybe I had just answered her question without meaning to. When we got back, all of Danby's stuff was gone. His locker cleared out, his pictures taken down, like he'd never been there at all. The next day, a stiff was waiting for us, a lieutenant colonel straight from HQ to give us the drill, wanting to know who saw Danby, what happened, when he'd gone, What he said just before going, how he looked, the whole routine, asking his stupid questions over and over, making my brain ache so bad I had to close my eyes and put my head in my hands, my fingers feeling that big lump on the back of my neck. It was all wrong, and they knew it somehow. Danby bothered them more than he should have, more than it had ever bothered them before. With my other outfits, some pencil pusher had shown up with the standard forms. 10 minutes. Talk into the mic. Thank you very much. Done. But this time it was different. More important. And Colonel Stiff was really annoyed. It bothered me too, though I didn't say anything then, because that'd be inviting trouble. Something was really cracked about this whole thing. Shika giving me strange looks ever since. And that whore, Angela, too, whenever I saw them together as they were most of the time now, whispering to each other. Before Danby, there had been some silent stream connecting them, an underground movement they shared for God knows what reason. Maybe because they were the only two women in the squad. But now, since Danby, they'd become inseparable, day and night, together every moment like lovers or something. Why did it all of a sudden start to get under my skin? I mean, I hated Shika more than all these other sorry bastards, a trained performer, doing her duty without feeling or remorse, killing efficiently and without respect for those she killed in any way she could, cool and machine-like. Pierre an insect to be crushed beneath her heel. And Angela was just a big nothing, an empty space, in danger of being blown away by the next stiff breeze. It rattled you the way she appeared and disappeared without a sound, even around the barracks, almost as if she wasn't really there. The one, hard and predatory, a slow, careful, unforgiving stalker. The other a phantom, a waking dream, smoke. Angela and Shika. I ignored them, but it gave me the creeps anyway. And for once I agreed. Everyone was right to be all worked up, because there was definitely something wrong, something about this outfit that made it wrong to do what Danby did. I opened my eyes. It was dark and the ground was cold and hard beneath my thin sheets, and I knew I wasn't alone. I rolled over. Shika hung over me, a gargoyle in the moonless dark, rain dripping down that long nose of hers to splash on my face. Did you tell them? I didn't say anything. Did you tell them? She hissed at me again. Tell them what? About Danby? I shook my head. She squatted there next to me in the cold and wet, her face a crumpled map of shadows and broken edges, her hooded eyes no longer focused on mine, but staring now at an invisible place. Shika? She looked startled, as if she'd forgotten I was there. Then she got this weird look in her eyes. I want to know, she said suddenly. Know what, Shika? In basic, a pretty boy like you could have had anyone. Why me? Why'd you sleep with me? The question caught me off guard. I looked up at her, at that ugly, deformed little face, with its hard lines and unforgiving angles. I started to say, I heard you gave good head, or I didn't have enough energy for a struggle. But for some reason the words stuck in my throat, wouldn't come out with that little face poking right into mine. Dunno, I said instead, shrugging, trying to sound unconcerned, uninterested. She peered at me intently, and I could feel her reaching deep down into me, trying to find the real reason, trying to pull it out. I looked away. Honest to God, I don't. She blinked once, twice, then began to push herself off her haunches. Shika? She stopped and looked at me. My heart thumped beneath the weight of my rain-soaked fatigues. Why don't you stay here tonight? She bit her lower lip, then shook her head slowly from side to side. Why not? I was surprised at the sudden surge of anger I felt, at the rising volume of my words. Is it because of that bitch, Angela? Is it? She shrugged. No, she said, simply, quietly, with the same finality with which I'd once seen her slice open the throat of an unlucky Pierre. She shifted her weight slightly, showing me what I hadn't seen before, the dull metallic gleam of the knife in her hand. You weren't so choosy back in basic, I said, watching the cold rain run off the tip of that blade. Neither were you. Fuck you, I said, trying not to let my voice shake, still watching that knife, hunkering back beneath my tarp and away from the rain. Go back to your Angela. Without a word, she slipped the knife into her boot and stood up, poncholess and insensible to the rain. Yeah, she said, I will. And as she strode off into the darkness, it felt as if she had somehow stolen part of me, taken it with her so that I would never be whole again. Another week passed and we managed to stay clear of each other. It wasn't until we were on recon, 2 days out, cold and tired and bored in the hills north of Lac Saint-Jean, that we spoke again. We'd been humping through terrain worn down by ages of erosion, covered by enormous pine and fir. There hadn't been much action in the last few weeks, just some hit-and-run stuff, nothing important. We hadn't even had a casualty, though we had to smoke some nationalistas out of an abandoned shack a few days ago. They were hungry and ragged, and the poor bastards almost looked grateful. But to command, 1 Pierre meant 100 more, so they sent us up into the hills to check it out, chasing after imaginary units because there was nothing better to do. I was supposed to be doing a wide sweep on our eastern flank, but I dragged my ass west instead, over towards where Angela was patrolling, because my neck had been itching all morning, a light, persistent tingling, telling me to go over there. It took me about half an hour to work my way round to where I guessed she was. It would have been much faster, but she had her gift, and though my neck itched wildly, urging me on, telling me I was headed the right way, I wasn't sure I could get close enough to the bitch without stepping on her first. So I went slowly, carefully, passing as silently as I could from shadow to shadow, and almost stumbled when I caught sight of Angela. She was standing beside a shallow creek, the sun beating down on her, no cover nearby, rifle and helmet at her feet, her thin hair not braided, but out and hanging down between those narrow shoulders, strands moving slightly in the breeze. I was a good 20 meters away, and I knew she was about to walk then, because if she wasn't, she'd have known by now I watched her, and would have vanished before I could do anything. Instead, she stood there, solid, more substantial than I'd ever seen her look before, staring north. I imagined her eyes, big and round and unfocused, great big pie-in-the-sky eyes, a walker's eyes. I raised my rifle and sighted, thinking strangely, not about her, but about Shika. Hard, unbreakable Shika. While I waited for those first few steps, for my chance to fire. Shika, like the callus on my thumb, dead and tough and unfeeling. Maybe, just maybe, I thought, I won't wait for her to take that first step. I caressed the trigger as if it were a charm, pulling it back ever so slowly, savoring the moment, tasting its satisfaction. Then froze, became stone, as dead still as I could, because my itch was back and shouting, "Don't move, don't breathe," telling me behind you. So I turned, slowly as I could, centimeter by centimeter, till I could see what I knew would be there, Shika. Her piece pointed at me, its muzzle making small hypnotic arcs, a snake about to strike, needing only the smallest of pressure from her finger to stitch across my stomach. Beside her lay Tremblay, his throat cut cleanly, blood still trickling onto last autumn's leaves beneath him. She had this insane look in those hard gray eyes, like she'd lost it or something, but I knew it wasn't that. Couldn't be that, with her standing the way she was. And then I thought, I'm gonna die, and began shaking, though I'd never been scared before. I wanted to talk to her, to tell her. What? I wasn't sure. Shika. I had this crazy urge to say to her, to those mad eyes staring through me, fixing me where I stood, a bug with a pin in it. But nothing came out. Then she fired. She didn't blink those eyes of hers, never took them off mine, just squeezed off the burst that brought Angela down in mid-stride as she stepped into the brook, tearing through her back and spraying out her front with her guts, shattering a small tree on the other side of the stream. Shika closed her eyes then, at last, and turned and walked away, unhurriedly, not bothering to duck and weave as she'd always done out here in the bush, but straight up and stiff-legged, like it was something she hadn't done in a long time, something she wasn't used to doing. I waited outside. She'd been hustled right in, still in her fatigues and recon gear, while I hung around outside the barracks, across from the mess hall where they took her, stripping my piece, meticulously cleaning and laying each part on a small sheet of plywood I'd found nearby. Cleaning and waiting, to see if she'd come out, to see if they'd call me in. People came and went, clerks and officers, even the CO, and the same stiff from HQ who'd been here when Danby walked. What would she tell them about Tremblay and Angela? What could she tell them? I waited until it got late and the lights went on in the mess, but they never called for me, and she never came out. Did you like Angela? It was dark in the barracks, and I could barely hear the whisper, but I knew right away who it was. Like her? Shit, I didn't even know her. How the hell could I like her? Sitting on Danby's bunk, I could make out Shika's squat form, and though I couldn't see her face, her shoulders looked tired and hunched. I liked her, she said. I felt a sudden stab of anger. Then why'd you waste her? I could feel her coil, as if she were about to come at me, but she didn't. Instead, she answered, because she loved me. Just like that. I thought then that she had snapped, had lost it, that all this shit they'd piled on us had finally made her go over the edge, that maybe she really was insane. She asked me to, she said when I didn't say anything, and it sounded like she was asking for my forgiveness. She made me promise, and I did. Yeah, I said stupidly. 'Cause she said she loved me. We both sat there in the dark for a minute before her voice came to me softly again. We're special, you know. Special? Yeah, special. She shifted her weight and I could hear the bunk creak. It sounded loud, and I wondered if anyone else was awake listening to this. You should know that. You've been here since the beginning. Can't you see we're special? I don't see anything special about us, I whispered to her. We're just a bunch of shit kickers, Shika. Too much trouble on our own, maybe, so they stick us together, you know, to minimize the problems. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Why do you think the brass is so pissed off? This squad isn't supposed to have walkers. That's why. I didn't know it before Danby walked, but when he did, I knew it wasn't right. You know? It didn't fit. It wasn't supposed to happen. Somewhere down inside me, I could feel muscles tightening. Yeah, so what? We've all seen our share of walkers. What's the big deal? She shook her head. Don't you see? Nothing happens by accident in the army. Nothing. It's that way because they wanted it to be that way. Understand? No, Don't be an asshole, she hissed at me. All you gotta do is watch. Why do you think they're making this stink? It's 'cause we're their prize guinea pigs, or were until this. I could hear pain in her voice, and it startled me, because it was something I'd never thought I'd hear from her. Did you know, she said, me still hearing the strain in that voice of hers, that we've had the best kill ratio for the last 5 months? And not a single walker the whole time. Now this, Danby and Angela, this is making them blow smoke out of their assholes. When I went in there, I thought they were going to crucify me, you know. But they asked hardly anything about Angela and nothing about old Tremblay. They don't even care about him, just about me. How are you? How did you feel about Angela? Does this upset you? Does this depress you? And on and on and on. And I'm thinking, why are they asking me? You know, and not wondering about why I offed the 2 of them in the first place. And I start to notice things. The way they keep looking into these little blue notebooks, Tremblay's notebooks, while they ask things and flip through files, thick files. These medical corps guys there, not doctors, but psychiatrist types. One I remember from a while ago who interviewed me just before they transferred me here. And get this, one guy even asks, where was Dr. Tremblay while this was happening? Can you believe that shit? Dr. Tremblay? He was a goddamn doctor. Maybe the guy made a mistake, Shika. No, he didn't. 'Cause the others looked at him sharp, like he'd fucked up bad, not like he'd made a little mistake. The way she said it, I knew she believed. No, he knew what he was saying. 'Cause they're the ones that put Tremblay there in the first place, to watch us, to spy on us, to take his notes. They're the ones that put us together, you, me, Angela, Danby, Cash, all of us. Even Sarge. Why? Why us? She shrugged. Who knows? She leaned forward until her head almost touched mine. Maybe it's 'cause we're all sick twists, she said slowly, carefully watching how I'd react, but I didn't move a muscle. Maybe we're like puzzles with a piece missing, the thing that makes walkers want to walk. Maybe something inside of us is stunted or not there, and so we can't walk. Or at least that's what the army thought. It was my turn to shrug. An awful lot of maybes, I said. She studied my face for a moment, then asked, "Why do you hate yourself?" A jagged flash of anger blinded me, and I began to rise, but before I could lift myself, Shika was on me, knocking my arms out from under me and pinning me to the bed, folding me in my sheets as if it were a cocoon. I struggled, letting out a wordless cry of frustration as I lay tangled in the sheets. But it was useless, and so I let myself go limp, forcing myself to be calm, letting the rage leach away. She made a strange sound then, a dog bark, and it was a moment before I recognized it for what it was, a laugh. "We're part of the experiment," she said. "Their search for that missing piece that'll stop Pierre's fever. We hate ourselves so much we can't think of anything else but dying. We're the exact sort they wanted, 'cause we conditioned ourselves better than they ever could have." They laid out a pattern of suppressing fire around us that chewed up great big chunks of earth and showered them down on our heads. It sounded like an old Gustav launcher with anti-tank rounds because of the way they detonated only after burrowing into the ground. Using it now seemed absurd, ludicrous, the same as killing an ant with a howitzer. An awful lot of trouble, an awful waste of energy to use it on us, so unlike Pierre's normal sparing use of ordnance. What could he be thinking? Crawling a few meters, I peeked over the lip of the crater and tried to spot their placement, where they dug in on the hillside, but it was hard to see because it was buried deep in the trees and creeping shadows. I looked quickly to either side, curious more than for any other reason, wondering what had happened to the other squad that was with us, but couldn't see much of anything, except for a few big holes where the shells had struck, an uprooted tree, and twisted and burned pieces of debris. I let myself slide back down into the crater next to Shika, Pettis, and what was left of Sarge. "Well?" Pettis asked, calm as always. "See anything?" "Nah." Pettis nodded, idly moving a piece of Sarge back and forth with the toe of his boot. He didn't look scared at all, just kind of aware for a change, that sleepy look gone from his face. At peace, I guess, as if he'd settled something with himself. He smiled at me, and I looked at him, his young face red and scrubbed, and realized I've never looked closely at him before. Never really looked at any of them. "Well," he said, "I guess I'd better get going." He smiled again, a warm, knowing smile, and winked, crazy bastard, winked at us. He crawled to the edge of the crater, teetered on the brink for a moment, then was gone. Shika stared at the sky, lying there on her back, but still wouldn't look at me. I heard the distant sound of first one, then two, semis opening up, and the distinctive reply of Pettis's piece. One of the semis suddenly fell silent, then the other, and all was quiet again. A moment later, the ground rocked with the impact of another strike not too far off. A dull thud and whistling of fragments, followed by a shower of dirt and small stones. I brushed the crap from where it had fallen on Shika's face. She shivered, pulling her arms tighter around her bloodied stomach, as if she believed that might stop her insides from spilling out through those gaping holes. I didn't know why she wasn't already dead. She should have died half an hour ago when she first caught the fragment. "Fuck it," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Fuck it all." I heard the thump of another shell, close this time, and leaned over to shield her as dirt and small rocks pattered around us, something sharp striking my back and bouncing away. The shower ended, and the silence was broken once more only by Shika's ragged breathing. "Why are you here?" The question was hard to hear, coming as it did, whispered, throaty, through tightly clenched lips, through her pain. I shrugged and rolled over onto my back next to her, the two of us staring up at the autumn sky like a couple of goofy kids. I knew it was a good question. I could have gone Pettis's way, maybe broken through even, at the very least, greased a few Pierres for my trouble. Or I could have tried for the forest behind. It was only about 200 meters and a few minutes until darkness, and if I made the cover, then they would never have been able to find me. But I stayed. "Maybe I've got that death wish you were talking about." "No." Her voice was weak, but the way she said it, I knew she meant it. She started to say something else, to explain herself maybe, but her lips twisted in a rictus of pain, and her words were choked off when she began coughing up blood. Silence fell then, a breathless calm, and I could hear her struggling to inhale, fighting for each breath, not surrendering a single one, focused entirely on drawing in air, making shattered muscles obey her will, raggedly forcing the oxygen into her torn lungs. It stopped. No, not stopped. Changed. Became quiet, steady, rhythmic, peaceful. Her eyes had a distant, faraway look in them. A walker's look. Her face was no longer hard and angry, just tired, full of sadness, as if for things she couldn't change. She relaxed her grip on her chest, and her arms slipped, bit by bit, down her sides, to where they lay, palms up, in the dark earth. I knew then that she would have walked if she could. It seemed to me that her little legs were restless, she wanting nothing more than to push herself to her feet, to get up and walk towards Pierre. But it was too late. She hadn't the strength. So I picked her up, lighter than I'd ever have imagined, as if all that were substantial about her, all that kept her nailed down to the earth, had fled. Only that little wisp of air, a tiny rising and settling of her chest, connecting her still to this world, still to me. I climbed the side of the crater, moving towards Pierre, through the gloom, through the shattered trees and smoke and debris. I walked without thinking, a distant part of me waiting for the sound of those final rounds, the last I knew I would hear. But it didn't seem important. The only important thing now, the small, misshapen figure cradled in my arms. And when her breathing finally stopped, I realized I was crying, my tears falling down onto her face, leaving little pink trails on her cheeks where they washed away the dust, hearing somewhere in the back of my mind, coming from a different place, a world I no longer belonged to, the faraway sound of choppers. 6 months have passed since then. I'm back in the valley now, attached to a unit west of Montreal, training new meat, teaching them what they didn't learn in basic, meaning just about everything. When I look around, their faces seem normal, young and scared and excited all at the same time, but mostly scared, though they wouldn't admit it. They strut around, pretending they're not frightened of anything or anyone, proudly flashing their new hardware as if they were marching in a parade. Every once in a while, I catch a glimpse of a face in the crowd with that same hardened look Shika wore, and my heart seems to stop then. In those moments, I can almost convince myself I hate her once again. Hate her for abandoning me. Hate her for leaving before I had my chance. I try not to think about it too much, but I know that soon I'll have no other choice. Because that day when she went, she took my hatred with her, leaving me with a big, empty space inside that I'm going to have to fill somehow, and it's hard to know where to begin. What did you think of this story? If it touched you in any way, please support it with like, subscribe, and share to your friends. Thank you for being here. May peace and good fortune always be with you.